Welcome Bitcoin friends, it's Bitcoin Mamo. Today we're going to look at the Bitcoin chart, do some TA. We'll look mainly at the longer term time frames, the daily, the weekly, the 2 weekly, and we'll compare the 2013 cycle to the current cycle, and we'll also look at the US dollar. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned and let's get into the charts. I just want to start here with Bitcoin on the daily. We've been stuck in this range for a couple of months now. And just want to point out that although we've been making lower lows here, we've also been making higher lows on the RSI. We have been creating these bullish divergences here, and they have resulted in pumps back to the upside, but with no follow through. We've always come back down lower. But as we saw when we topped out, we did have multiple bearish divergences and we did push higher several times, but eventually it did play out, causing us to come down with a big drop to the downside. So I think what's happening here is something similar but on a lot smaller scale. So we do have 5 examples of bullish divergence here, and it looks like we're trying to form another one here where currently we do have higher lows on the RSI and lower lows on the price with these purple lines. But again, if we were to cross below this previous low and make a lower low on the chart, then that divergence will no longer be there, and I would expect Bitcoin to have a bigger drop down. But so far this divergence is still in play, so we'll have to see how it plays out. We notice the stochastic RSI on the daily did completely cool off here, and the previous time that we were this low was during this initial drop all the way down here. And just to quickly show you that, where we did top out here, we can see where we're making lower highs on the RSI successively and higher highs on the price, but eventually this did play out and we did have this big drop down. And over to the Bitcoin CME futures chart here, we also have these divergences playing out here. Just zoom in a bit more so it's more obvious, and just where these arrows are, we can see we've been making successive lower lows on the price but higher lows on the RSI, and again we're looking for that higher low here again with possibly lower low on the price and bullish divergence again, and hopefully Bitcoin can see a move to the upside resulting from that. So I do have these gaps marked in here from the futures chart. There is this big gap here between 25.9 and 23.8, and there's also a gap further down here at 18.5 to 19.2. It's just something to pay attention to. I also have the VPVR pulled up here with the amount of volume traded at certain price levels, and we do see a decent spike here compared to what's around it, and this level is at 27,350 approximately. And if we just have this red dotted line here and take it across, we can see that it sort of lines up here with the bottom of this white trend line connecting the lows. And also when we join the 2 tops here and do a trend line, it also connects the top here on the run up. We can see that all 3 of these seem to meet at this point here around 27.5, and that's on the 23rd of July. So perhaps we could come down here and look for a touch here. We could also go down further and try to fill this gap, and anything is possible here. We've just got to look at certain key levels and all the possibilities here. We also do have this gap higher up here between 48.3 and 46.5, which never got filled. So it's just something to pay attention to there. The next key level here on the VPVR would be all the way down at 23,000, but we can see the support starting to come in around 24.3, and this lies in this area where this gap is. So I'd be looking for this area first at 27.5. If we do continue down here, I'd be watching to see if we do get a bounce here. If we do break this level, then I think we could have a quick drop here down to the 24,000 area to fill these gaps. So this is on the weekly chart for Bitcoin, and as we can see, we closed below the weekly EMA ribbon here, which isn't a good sign. And if Bitcoin does end up closing this current week below this ribbon, then we will have an open and close below this ribbon, and I would expect a drop further down. Ideally, I'd like to see Bitcoin close back inside this ribbon and then try to use it as support. And we also have this falling wedge drawn here, connecting the lows and the high here and this high. And the falling wedges are a bullish pattern, so there is a possibility that we do break to the upside out of this wedge. Perhaps we'll come down for one more touch on this trend line and then try to make a push towards the upside. But ideally, I would like Bitcoin to close the week inside this EMA ribbon. Also have these two CME gaps drawn in on the spot price here. And we can see it lines up also on the spot chart with the volume profile here. And as a worst case scenario during bear markets, we do like to come down to the 200-week moving average, which currently is all the way down at 14,000. That's an absolute worst case. I don't think that's going to happen. I think if we did have a big drop here, it would be a week, possibly just to fill maybe this top gap. I think it would get bought up quite quickly. And just to show you that the 200-week moving average here does act as the bottom in bear markets. We can see here during this 2018 bear market, we came down pretty much exactly to that moving average. This green line here is just the 208-week moving average, which is the 4-year moving average. And we can see on the previous bear market here, we did wick down lower, but we didn't close any bodies of the candles below this 200-week moving average and also this 208-week moving average. But that is the worst case scenario, and I'm not looking for that to happen. I don't think we're in a bear market. We also have these golden pocket areas marked out here, taking it from the bear market low to the peak up here around 65,000. We can see the golden pocket here lies between 26.9 and 24.6. And if we take it from the stock market crash here to the top, we get a similar golden pocket, just slightly higher, 25.3 to 27.3. And just taking it here from the last pullback to the peak, the golden pocket here, which we will look on another chart, we are basically sitting on the 0.618 level. So perhaps we could come down and fill this gap, but end up closing the weekly above in this golden pocket area. And just to show you that golden pocket there, that last one we were talking about, just taking it from the previous pullback. This is on the 2-week chart to the peak. Currently we are right on the 0.618 level, and the 0.65 level is around 29,000 even. So I would like to see Bitcoin stay in this area, at least close a weekly above this golden pocket area. We can see we did just open a new 2-week candle here, and unfortunately we did close below this green box I've had drawn here where we had previous support and resistance. So that's something in favor of the bears there. And if we do break this golden pocket area, I would expect a quick move down, possibly to fill that gap. And just to compare the 2013 cycle to the current cycle here, we can see this bull run here was 2011 peaking at the end of 2013. We did get this mid-cycle pullback here, which was quite a dramatic pullback. I believe it was around 70-75%. And then we did have this long sideways period, and then we finished the bull run here. And I think this current cycle is possibly doing a similar thing. You can see we did have this really quick run up here, and now we've had this decent pullback, this 50-55% pullback, and we have been going sideways for a while here. But what I want to point out here is on the RSI, I just have this parallel channel drawn here. And what I've done is just connected the top here from this first peak mid-cycle and just connecting it to the current top here where we peaked out on the RSI. And I've just drawn this parallel channel, and it comes down to the bottom of this pullback. And you can see that just circled in red. And just looking across, we can see we're currently at the bottom of this trend line. So these are parallel lines here. So we didn't come quite as high here on the RSI, and we did go lower here on the RSI. So it's just interesting that we happen to be right at this point now. Perhaps we are at the bottom of this pullback. I just think that was an interesting comparison here, if we are doing a similar thing to this previous cycle in 2013. Also have this trend line drawn here, which I thought was quite interesting. This is on the logarithmic chart, and it's just taking it from the bear market low here in 2015, also connecting the low here in the 2018-2019 bear market. And we can see that this trend line did act as support here. When we did break it, we had a big crash here during the stock market crash. It's acted as resistance several times as we try to get above. And when we did break above, we had this big run up. And right now we are coming down to this trend line, and does look quite similar here to this area here where we did have this big run up, and we're coming down to meet this trend line. So just something to watch. I think that's an important trend line. Currently it's at around 28,000. This is the 2-week chart, and we did just open this 2-week candle here. And looking at the US dollar, it seems to be doing the opposite of what Bitcoin's doing at the moment. We can see this is on the daily chart, and we can see we're making lower highs on the RSI, but higher highs on the price. And this is multiple drives here of bearish divergence. And again here we look to be trying to make one more high with also a lower high on the RSI. So very similar to Bitcoin, but just in an opposite fashion here. If you flip this upside down, it would look quite similar to that Bitcoin bottom with successive lower lows, but that divergence. And looking at it on a bigger time frame here, was looking for a pullback here. I saw this wedge pattern that the US dollar is in, and we did get a pullback here last time. We are getting all this divergence. So just interesting that it's doing quite the opposite to Bitcoin. And perhaps if we were to get a pullback here, it might be a sign that Bitcoin might be looking for a pump. And actually, just to show you that inverted, this is the US dollar. We can see that this sort of looks like Bitcoin had this big drop, and now making lower lows, but with that divergence. And just quickly on market cipher, we're still looking for that green dot here on the weekly. We did close the week a bit lower, so this has been extended. We still don't have that green dot on the weekly. The daily here also looks close to getting a green dot, so we'll have to look for that for a possible bounce here. And just looking on Bybit here at the Bollinger Bands, we did get them squeezing here on the daily, and we have started coming down here. So we could possibly come down to the bottom of this trend line. We also have this downward sloping trend line connecting in these tops, which seems to be acting as resistance. Interestingly here, if we look at the Ichimoku cloud here on the daily, the larger this cloud is, the more resistance this acts as. And we can see it does start to close down here, and there seems to be less resistance later on towards the end of the month. So it might be something to watch for here. Once we get closer to the end of the month, perhaps this could be an opportunity for Bitcoin to try to break above this cloud. So thanks for watching. I try to present the bearish and the bullish case there and possible targets. And we'll just have to see how Bitcoin plays out the rest of this week and heading towards the end of the month. We'd all like to see Bitcoin get a decent bounce, but we have to be realistic with certain bearish targets that may be possible. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that on Bitcoin Mamo. See you next time. Bye.